Metro West is the third major new build line being delivered in the current phase of Sydney Metro. Although originally planned to open before 2030, following the Metro review, the opening is now targeted for 2032. The line will provide more capacity between Sydney and Parramatta and will shorten journey times along the same corridor. In this video, I will outline the features of the line, including the route, planned stations, operations, trains and systems, and other thoughts I have on the line. But first, a quick note. This and future videos are made possible by the generosity of my channel members. Find out how you can support my work by clicking the join button below. I plan on making some very exciting videos later this year, which involve significant upfront costs, which I can only justify with the predictability of memberships. Enjoy the video. Construction is well underway on the project. The tunnelling and excavation package was split into 3 contracts. East, between Hunter Street and the Bays station on the edge of Rozelle, Central, between the Bays and Olympic Park, and West, between Olympic Park and Westmead. Of these contracts, the Central package is more or less finished, with all tunnels and station excavations complete. The Western package is about 2/3 complete, with station excavation nearly finished and tunnelling complete from Olympic Park to just short of Parramatta. The Eastern package is the least complete, with tunnel boring machines nearly at Piermont and station excavation still ongoing. Once these packages and the civil earthworks for the depot at Clyde are all completed, the next contractor will take over, starting the fit-out of the tunnels, depot and stations, originally scheduled for the beginning of 2026. Testing and commissioning were originally planned to start halfway through 2027, but realistically this will likely be much later, possibly even in 2029. The route has been selected to provide a relatively direct, just over 20-minute journey between Parramatta and the Sydney CBD, while also allowing for interchanges with Sydney trains and providing rail access to new suburbs. The route accordingly runs to the north of the existing main line between Central and Parramatta, with stops planned at Westmead, Parramatta Square, opposite the L4 line with no connection to the existing Parramatta station, Olympic Park, also with no connection to the existing station, North Strathfield, Burwood North, 5 Dock, the Bays, serving White Bay and Rozelle, Piermont and Hunter Street. Hunter Street will have a paid connection to Martin Place Station and an unpaid connection to Wynyard Station. 2 additional stations are being investigated between Parramatta and Olympic Park, one of which could be at Rosehill if the Australian Turf Club decides to sell the racecourse. The other site could likely be Silverwater, where a services facility is currently being constructed. Providing new rail access to places like Piermont, White Bay, Rozelle and 5 Dock will reduce these suburbs' extensive reliance on slow and unreliable buses and provide a much more useful connection to Olympic Park even on non-event days, which will encourage more people to use public transport, removing the need to take the very slow T7 shuttle to Lidcombe and change. By the way, before anyone asks, no, we shouldn't connect the T7 to the T6, because it would cost far too much to get from the north of the main line to the south in a bridge or a tunnel. I'll now take a look at each station in detail. Westmead Station is being constructed to the south of the existing station, across Alexandra Avenue. This site is mostly low-density residential, and thus is cheaper to acquire, and as such a full station box has been excavated. Despite being on its own site across the road from the train station, there will be no dedicated metro station entrance at Westmead, with passengers required to enter through a subway that connects to the existing platforms. There will be 2 sets of escalators and 2 lifts from this passageway to the platforms. Above ground, a new overhead concourse will serve the existing and new platforms with widened entrances and better access. Over-station development will be located above the station box, with public domain works too. Stub tunnels will extend west of the station box, however, as far as I can tell, the only crossovers will be on the Sydney side of the station, thus trains could use both platforms. The station would primarily serve the large hospital complex due to the low-density nature of the surrounding suburb. However, it also serves an important role as a major interchange hub, with passengers from the Northwest T-Way and the L4 tram line able to join the metro, as well as train passengers coming from further west on the T1. Parramatta Station is also, amazingly, being built as a station box, despite being located in the middle of the Parramatta CBD. It will not be connected to the existing Sydney train station, and will likely take the name of the adjacent tram stop, Parramatta Square. Two entrances, one onto a new Civic Link, gentrification speak for a pedestrian mall, and one on Church Street, will lead to an upper concourse directly below street level, which runs the whole length of the station box. From there, 3 sets of switchback escalators lead to the platforms. Both entrances will have over-station developments, as well as 2 large sites on top of and adjacent to the station box. The Civic Link will form part of a new corridor through Parramatta, and will also connect to a new shared zone on Macquarie Street to Smith Street, which is where the station's bus stands will be located. Olympic Park will also sit inside a station box, and, like Parramatta, will not be connected to the existing station. It will, however, be the largest of the stations, as it is designed to move enormous crowds following major events. It will have what is known as a Spanish solution layout, almost identical to the existing station, with platforms on both sides of the train, only with each track moving in a different direction. In normal circumstances, as at the existing station, only the central island will be used, with 3 flights of escalators leading to 2 separate station entrances. 2 additional event mode entrances will allow more direct access to the 2 side platforms. In this event mode, it is likely that the outer platforms will be the boarding platforms and the island platform for alighting passengers. This is one of the stations I'm most interested to see the final designs for. The Metro works here also include a new parallel street to Olympic Boulevard, and there is provision for 2 overstation buildings and a further 3 adjacent station developments. This station will also allow easy connection to Stage 2 of the Parramatta Light Rail when that opens in the early 2030s. North Strathfield is the second direct rail interchange, although it won't be as quick as at Westmead. The station box lies immediately east of the existing station, sandwiched between Queen Street and the freight dive-under. 2 flights of escalators will lead from a new overhead concourse with level access to Queen Street down to the Metro platforms. This new concourse will then bridge over the main North Railway with access to platforms 1 to 3 and to an improved alleyway between Hamilton and Pomeroy Streets. The existing overhead concourse will remain with a connection to the Metro building, being slightly less direct. There is no proposed over or adjacent development at North Strathfield. One thing I'm disappointed to see is the lack of extra rail capacity built as part of the project. This is a perfect opportunity to construct a Platform 0. Currently, the up relief diverges just south of Rhodes, but becomes the North Strathfield goods line with no other connection to the up north main. Space is available from North Strathfield all the way to Strathfield Junction for a 4th track, and a platform could be built at North Strathfield on top of the freight dive. Given a new overhead concourse is being delivered, this could be integrated easily. This 4th track would allow express trains to run past suburban trains, and would not create any additional conflicts at Strathfield Junction. Given the desperate need for the main north to be fully quad-tracked, it would be a shame to miss this golden opportunity. Burwood North Station will sit north of Parramatta Road in a station box, with a pedestrian subway to a second entrance to the south. Escalators will lead from street level to the ticket hall, where the subway diverges, thus making the subway free to use in the unpaid area. From this ticket hall, more escalators lead to a landing just above platform level, where further escalators distribute passengers along the platform. There is lots of space allocated for over and adjacent station development, which will integrate well with the proposed massive uplift of this area by Burwood Council. A new pedestrian and cycling lane will be built on top of the station box, connecting Parramatta Road with Burton Street. West of the station lies a crossover cavern to allow trains to change track, allowing flexibility during engineering works or unplanned service disruptions. Five Dock is the first mined cavern station, with 2 shafts connected underground by a tubular cavern similar to Victoria Cross. The single entrance will be on the Great North Road, with local access enabled by an expansion of the lane connecting to East Street. From this entrance, 2 long sets of escalators will lead directly to the platforms, very similar to the layout on the Bathurst Street entrance to Gadigal. This means the platforms will only be fed at one end, so locals better get good with their door positions, or they'll be left with a long walk to the escalators. The shaft on the eastern end will only be used for emergency egress and station services. There is no provision for over or adjacent station development. However, some space within the station entrance and the services building will be available to rent. The bays in Rozelle is yet another cut and cover station box. Despite being quite close to the city, the site is industrial land adjacent to the former White Bay power station, so land acquisition was not a major cost. The entire area will be revitalised, with mixed-use developments replacing much of the old dockyards. The station will have 2 above-ground buildings, both with potential over-station developments. However, only one building will have an entrance. From this entrance, 2 escalators will lead to a landing, where further escalators lead to the platforms. The lifts run directly from street level to the platforms, so I suspect these will be in high demand from regular users of the station. There will also be a traction substation at the site, presumably tapping into the underground 132 kV distribution line, which runs adjacent to the western distributor. Piermont Station has quite an interesting design. It features 2 shafts along Piermont Bridge Road, connected by a mined cavern, as at Five Dock. However, both shafts will have entrances. The western shaft also does not lie directly above the cavern, so a small ADIT, a short connector tunnel, will run north into it. Above the platforms, within the cavern, will lie a continuous walkway, similar to those along the former Epping to Chatswood rail link. From the eastern entrance, 2 flights of escalators, I think, the layout drawings aren't clear, will lead to this overhead walkway, as well as a lift, with another flight of escalators leading to the platforms. From the western entrance, 2 escalators will lead from street level to the ADIT, where after a short walk along the walkway, a flight of stairs and escalators leads to the platform. I appreciate the use of stairs in these cases. Small ascents and descents should use stairs more. They are obviously cheaper, but also allow a higher flow of people and can adjust dynamically to suit flow in different directions much quicker than escalators. Lifts would also run from this entrance to the ADIT. Lifts would lead from the centre of the platform to the centre of the walkway. Both street-level buildings will feature over-station developments, and a crossover cavern will be built to the west of the station. Hunter Street is the only station in the city, and as such will be by far the busiest on the line, possibly also on the entire Sydney Metro system. Unlike Pitt Street, it lies almost completely on Hunter Street, with 2 entrances on it. Thus, I don't hate the station name sharing the street name, although I think it's quite likely it will be changed prior to opening. The station is being built in a similar way to Piermont, with the eastern shaft falling directly over the cavern on the corner of Hunter and O'Connell Streets, and the western shaft slightly offset on the corner of George and Hunter Streets. There will be a subway between the western shaft and Wynyard Station, which will be an unpaid connection, meaning you will have to tap off and then tap back on again. The eastern shaft, however, will have a paid subway connection to the northern end of Martin Place Station, effectively making Hunter Street an extension of Martin Place. This connection would arrive at the central corridor of Martin Place Metro Station, thus depositing passengers directly at platform level. Like at Piermont, this station has an elevated walkway over the full length of the platforms, with 6 banks of escalators leading from it to the platforms and lifts in the middle. This will ensure people are whisked off the platform very quickly, leaving it available for waiting westbound passengers. The eastern shaft will have a further 2 banks of escalators leading to street level, with the western shaft requiring passengers to circle back between the 2 escalators, as at Martin Place currently. Hunter Street will, unlike Westmead, have a proper turnback to the east of the station, which curves somewhat to point south. This is where trains will shunt forward to after arriving on Platform 1, before reversing to Platform 2, similar to what happened at Chatswood before the city extension. An additional 2 short subtunnels are being built to accommodate a potential further extension to the east or south. The depot at Clyde will be the only part of the route above ground. The depot site is massive, with an enormous amount of earthworks still ongoing to flatten the entire area. The potential size of the yard is equally enormous, with space likely available for over 50 trains in the future. On opening, however, only 16 trains will be required, which will be reflected in the track layout. I suspect the size here is to allow fleet expansion to allow 30 trains per hour on a much expanded line with full-length trains. There will be space for a 7-road maintenance shed. However, again, this will likely be much smaller on opening. For context, Metro Western Sydney Airport will open with 12 trains, and will open with a yard large enough for 9 trains, plus 3 shed roads, but in future can be expanded to accommodate 60 trains with 4 shed roads. The dive to the main line tunnels lies on the site of the former Rosehill station, with 2 dives leading to their respective tunnels. Also on the site is the Rosehill Services Facility, which could become a future Rosehill station if the Australian Turf Club decides to sell the Rosehill racecourse and if the state government decides to buy it to create the proposed new city. This is a full-length cavern which is currently used to support the TBMs for this tunnelling package. They were launched here in both directions. Nearby is the other traction substation, although OpenInfraMap does not show any nearby high-voltage distribution lines. We can guess that the line would run to the same timetable as the M1 line, with 4-minute headways on peak, 5 minutes into peak, and 10 minutes off peak, during similar service hours, roughly 500 hours to 100 hours. The contract to supply trains has not yet been announced. However, Alstom, CRRC, Hyundai Rotem, and Siemens have been shortlisted. These companies would all supply off-the-shelf trains from their respective metro families. These companies will also supply signalling and other associated assets. Trains would initially be 6 cars, I believe, with the possibility to extend to 7. The trains will have very wide cars, about 3,200mm, and the cars will also be about 21.5 metres long. For context, the Metropolis trains on the M1 line have cars which are 3,035mm wide and only 20.25 metres long. They will likely be capable of 100 km/h speeds and have a very similar interior layout to the Metropolis fleet. The operators of the line have also been shortlisted. These are a consortium of RATP Dev, French government-owned operator of the Paris Metro and future operator of the Western Sydney Airport line, and John Holland, a local business primarily in infrastructure maintenance and management, but with a little side gig running buses in the eastern suburbs alongside Transdev. Keolis Downer, a joint venture between Keolis, itself a joint venture between the French National Railway SNCF, 70%, and Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec, a Québécois pension fund, 30%, and Australian private company Downer, MTR Corporation, a public transport operator and major real estate business owned by the government of Hong Kong, primarily to operate the Hong Kong MTR, with other international operations including the M1 line of Sydney Metro, and a consortium of CDC, a major bus operator, and UGL Rail, a major rail operator and maintainer. Metro West will undoubtedly be a crucial piece of Sydney's transport puzzle when it opens. I, however, cannot help but think if there are any alternatives to the project that could have enabled wider benefits. Building the line as a hybrid suburban-urban railway with an automated underground core and conventional branches would have allowed Western Line trains to run directly to Hunter Street with a dedicated single-decker fleet. This would allow more capacity on T9 during peak, as paths are cleared from the suburban and main lines between Westmead and the city. It would also allow Inner West Express trains to run proper expresses, using the suburbans to overtake local trains. Railways like this, call them S-Bahns, RERs, or whatever you like, have enormous potential, and this has been realised in massive infrastructure projects like Crossrail in London, Metro Tunnel in Melbourne, and Cross River Rail in Brisbane. Whilst the separated metro system is good in some cases, Sydney cannot afford to entirely discount the possibility of hybrid systems altogether. As this project is still in its early stages, lots of details are still unclear. As things like contracts are awarded, detailed station and train designs are revealed, and major construction milestones are reached, I will make community posts and possibly further videos to fill in the gaps. On that note, I'd like to thank my channel members for their ongoing support, and I'd like to thank you for watching.